All right, class, in this video, we're just going to work through some basic number classification. All right, and this is important for you to try to kind of tuck in your mind the difference between things like rational numbers, integers, whole numbers, and natural numbers. Now, this outside box, this purple box, we've got things like 0.4 repeating and 1/2 and 0.45, -3/4. This whole outside group we are going to label as rational numbers. Now, one way, look at this root word ratio. When you think of a rational number, what you're dealing with is a number that can be expressed as a ratio between two numbers. So you'll notice you'll have 1/2. 1/2 is a ratio from 1 to 2, or with 1 and 2. 0.4 repeating, I've got a separate video that talks about how you can convert 0.4 repeating to a fraction. But we know that can be expressed as a rational number. It's not about whether it's positive or negative. You'll notice that there's a -3/4 here. That is a ratio of -3 to 4. And so that is considered a rational number. This is a very broad group of numbers. It includes all numbers that, well, aren't irrational. We'll worry about irrational later. It's kind of on a little side box if you think about it. I've seen some where they will draw a box over to the side, and we would call these irrational numbers, okay? We'll worry about that later. But in this video, what's our next box in, our next little circle, are our integers. Now, integers, you'll notice that we've got -8 and -3. That does not mean that only negative numbers are integers. When we get to the middle of these two circles, well, I guess we could call these circles, right? But they're close. All right, they're going to include positive and negative numbers, but we're not dealing with numbers written as fractions, okay? So -8 is still a rational number. And so basically as you think about this box on the outside, and as we move in towards this center box, the center circle, each layer that goes in, if you think of like an onion maybe, the outside includes all that's on the inside. So your rational numbers, 1/2, will include your integers. Whether they're negative or positive, it doesn't matter. But when we look at a number like -8 or +8, all right, we can drill that down beyond rational and call it an integer. What about this next one? This next inside the red, we're going to call these whole numbers. Now, whole numbers are going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, and so forth. They start at 0 and they move up. But what about our natural numbers? Now this is this next group. I'm going to have to draw kind of an arrow here. Hopefully this doesn't get too messy. But we're going to call these natural numbers. Now natural numbers are going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, and so forth. It just doesn't include the 0. All right. So when we think about natural numbers, just kind of really, this is how you learn to count. Honestly, go back to kindergarten, K4, early on. You started using these counting numbers, 1, 2, 3, and you were using numbers here from a set known as the natural numbers. And so whole numbers include all the natural numbers, but we add 0. Integers include all the whole numbers and all the natural numbers. But notice the difference. When we get to integers, we begin to include negatives. Whole numbers and natural numbers, you didn't learn to count using negative numbers when you were in kindergarten. Okay, so integers include all the whole numbers, all the natural numbers, but they include the negative set of them as well. So if you think of going to the left of 0 on a number line, that's all your integers as well. So that's whole numbers, natural numbers, integers. When we back out one more level, that's when we get to our rational numbers. And that's when we begin to say, hey, we can have fractions too. And I can take 1 and express its rational number because 1 is a natural number, right? It's a whole number. It's also an integer. But it's also rational. I'm talking about the number 1 because I could express it as 1/1. Now, I wouldn't do that, but I could, and that's a ratio. I could say that 1/4 is a rational number, okay, because it's a ratio of 1 to 4, but it's not an integer. Why is it not an integer? All right, it does not equal integer because it's a fraction. When we deal with integers, we're just dealing with numbers. Everything's going to be over a +1 when you're dealing with integers, whole numbers, or natural numbers. So you've got to think through this chart a little bit, but it is a very helpful chart to lock into your brain. I will tell you, sometimes on the PSAT, SAT, ACT tests, they will say something, sometimes on the math sections, a set of all rational numbers, or the set of positive integers. They love that one. A set of negative integers. And that's going to be a big clue to how you solve that problem. And so go ahead, take some time, replay this video, and think through the set of all real numbers.